Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to a fantastic, wonderful epic. This is episode 160 task of the CryptoManiacs podcast. How you feeling 160 episodes into this stuff?
I did not know it was that many. I lost track after 102.
There you go. I
So
lost track after five. But there you go. He's back, folks. We have Disregard Fiat from the Deluxe team here. Once again, this is, I think, is his 15,000th appearance. That works out math wise because we've done 160 and he's been here 15,000 times. So perfect math for me. That's why he is the developer and I am just the guy that dances on camera and sings songs. So Disregard, Steve, welcome, sir. Welcome back to the show.
Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. The sunglasses for those not listening, those watching this are just amazed by the sunglasses. But if you're listening to the epicness of what is taking place right now, he's challenging task for epic sunglass wearing. That's an achievement.
and he's got the reflective type. So I mean, it's like he's styling and profiling. I got to give him credit. I mean, he's the man down under there from where I'm at. Well, from where you are at too, John.
Yeah. So welcome back, man. Good to have you. How are things? How's life? How was Hard Fork 26 for you?
Busy. Everything's pretty busy for me. Yeah. The Hard Fork went pretty well. And together with my stuff, it's going busy. It's going busy.
You're developing a few projects at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And well, let's start the show off, John, with the asking for money. Mr. Disregard has a proposal up. You want to tell us about it, Steve? What's the proposal, and why should everybody rush right over to Peak D or whatever they use and vote for your proposal, which I believe I did already.
Yeah, I think I see you up there. I have proposal 234. Really nice to remember, and it's to help develop the Honeycomb software a little bit further. I'd have to pull it up to say exactly what I promised to do on there, but
You sound like a politician now. Well, I said something, but I don't know what the hell I promised.
yeah. What it comes down to is there's a whole lot of things that I foresee as the software really needing. For instance, the ability to run like a zero knowledge proof, so we can do more off-chain things. Bringing in the better suites of multi-signature stuff, and a lot of it's like in progress and whatnot, and I'm just hoping the community would support me a little bit further as these things become less directed at, like, say, the Speak network, and they're just things that everybody can use, because as some people would know, is I'm developing a lot of stuff for the Speak network as well, but that work is becoming less pointed toward them and just pointed toward the upkeep. So yeah, hopefully Honeycomb is something that a lot more people would be able to use to make Hive work for them.
Maybe we should go into it and tell for those who are not aware, what is Honeycomb? What does this bring to the Hive ecosystem, and what does it give developers in terms of the infrastructure that you're building? What does this do for developers?
Yeah, so Honeycomb is it's a layer 2 software, and what it does is it lets you as a community pull together your resources. Its architecture is slightly different than a normal blockchain because it's a state machine, so it takes the Hive blockchain as an input, and since the Hive blockchain is already there, it doesn't try to keep a record of everything that's gone in. So it really does operate as like a second layer. It's really lightweight because it only keeps in its memory the things that are important to it right now. It would be kind of like saying if Hive forgot about everything that was paid out once it's paid out, it's kind of like that. So it's really cheap for you as a community of witnesses of whatever you're interested in to operate this software in a cheap way. So we have 3 different networks currently running in there. Duat, which is for Ragnarok, a game that's coming out soon. TM, Deluxe, which is our network, and Speak, which hopefully will help us put more software, or not just software, but like a memory storage device payment layer for the Hive network right now, utilized primarily for the videos on the Speak network, but it'll also help us at Deluxe storing software content.
And so Honeycomb is this base layer, well, not base layer, layer 2 base infrastructure software that other developers can start to build on and utilize and integrate into their applications, their platforms, their games, whatever they're working on. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm forgetting because it is really a big project. So, for instance, it has its own integrated DEX. So any of the tokens that you use on this network, you don't have to go through any third parties to have a DEX between Hive and whatever token is in your ecosystem. So the network of people that operate the nodes, like I said, if it's $5 for me, it's $5 for you, it's $5 for John, and together we operate a multi-signature wallet autonomously through this software that builds DEX transactions for people. So anybody would be able to interact with your coin through Hive without, hopefully with as low fee as possible and with equal or higher trust than other paradigms that are out there.
Yeah, I think it's important because we've been banging the drum, and I guess we're kind of following what Dan and Starker's bang on all the time. But with Ethereum and the merge, and now everybody's saying, well, are they going KYC and the centralization, blah, blah, blah. The node system that you have put together for this is actually a decentralized node system. Is that correct? And people can sign up and can run their own nodes. They're exclusive of anybody else. And I guess it's a lot tied into the Speak network because they are rewarding people using the Speak token. So I guess that's kind of their node system. But obviously, this is something that could be replicated. Am I understanding it correctly?
Right. So the base layer just comes with the ability to read this, read the blockchain, and have the DEX for the tokens that are important for it. And then on there, you can pretty much put any kind of smart contract you want in there. So we have smart contracts currently that do kind of like an oracle, which reads into the state snapshot and a few other things. So you really can put just about anything onto this network as is. And if you wanted to look at exactly what my proposal was for, it's for helping people build new tokens. So I want to build an automatic configurator. So you come in and say, I want to do basket weaving network, and this will put together a config file for you.
That's what's going to make Hive a top 10 token is the basket weaving network.
Dude, I was about to say, like, sign me up. Basket weaving token, like,
yeah.
when
Well, you never know what
so.
kind of communities will take off, but
They're
general,
a
it's for
small but dedicated bunch. I'll tell you that much. They're very passionate.
Well, it's true because I'm hoping that anybody would be in there, and I say that just kind of I want it to be as simple as possible. I don't wouldn't put like the basket weaving community as the DeFi decentralized network experts. Other things in there are like automated RC credits and RC credit markets, account creation markets, ZK rollups, stability and documentation improvements. But yeah, the ZK rollups and the automated configuration are definitely the most important parts of that.
So basically, you're looking at providing a very simple, very, I would say, inexpensive. If I'm jumping to a conclusion that's incorrect, please tell me. But a low cost, simple way to create for communities to create tokens. Correct?
Right.
And this will be, I would presume, both fungible and non-fungible. Can they do NFTs too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Currently, the base network has proof of brain, NFTs, the DEX that's in there, and these are all features that you can turn off or off in the configuration file. So if you want to build a proof of brain network for your community and just have certain like community members, or it depends on how you want to run it. But at the simplest part, you say this is the keyword that I want to track, and or this is the beneficiary rewards that I want to track, and you can build your proof of brain around those just very few options. And then hopefully,
Good.
as anybody takes those options and makes them different, that open source will be available for other people as well.
And obviously, people, I mean, this was one drawback that people were saying with the SMTs is when we were bannering that around is SMTs will replicate Hive, so there will be proof of brain and that's it. It's very limited. I'm presuming that you have the proof of brain, so if you want, you can make it like an SMT. You can replicate Hive, you can replicate whatever, but you can do other things if you want outside of it. You could make it a governance token, you can make it an access token, you can make it whatever you want, correct?
Right.
And maybe this is for people who are listening, because we often do better when we contrast things. And what most people are familiar with on Hive at the layer 2 is Hive Engine. Maybe could you draw, based upon what most people know with Hive Engine, can you draw some similarities or some differences, maybe, so people can understand a little better what Honeycomb is and what you're building versus what they see with Hive Engine? What would you say the top 3 or 4 similarities and differences are?
The top similarities, at a general level, they operate kind of the same. You eat blocks and spit out, all of the stuff the gristle. So you ingest, say, custom JSON that says, I want to do a token transfer between me and party B, and that's the meat of the blockchain. And they both go through the blockchain and just eat every bit of it in like the get block API. And then they say, okay, this is the interesting part, the little morsel that I'm looking for. And the problem, or not the problem, the contrast between the way that Deluxe or Honeycomb and Three Speak run versus the Hive Engine is on Hive Engine, you have um, the whole thing is all at once. So, for instance, if let's say there's what tokens are on Hive Engine, you're looking at Splinterlands
Leo,
transactions,
CTP.
CTP, Leo Finance, all of these things. So if you want to run a Hive Engine node, you have to ensure that your witness that you're running on Hive Engine can uh, take in all of that ecosystem. And the further that that ecosystem grows, the more that it's going to cost you to do a witness. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at the end of the day, it's going to be smaller than whatever Hive has. So
Mhm.
you're going to have a witness somewhere between like as small as it can be and where Hive is, so in the middle there. But it's not as small as it could be just for you. So I think right now they're probably in the 5 GB range for a state file, which is a lot larger than our state files, which I want to say they're probably in the 100K neighborhood. Just because we have a lot less stuff that we're looking at. So each network looks after its own stuff. So we might have 100K here and 100K here and 100K here. And it's the same on Hive Engine, but you just have, say, 500 tokens that are 100K, or, maybe Splinterlands is a lot bigger than 100K. But based on you have to just have a computer that'll run all of it. The other major difference between the two is the way that you get funds into and out of the network. For instance, if you want to build anything on there, you buy B tokens,
Mhm.
and you set up your token, and you have a DEX that's not necessarily a real DEX. It has aspects of like our decentralized DEX, but at the end of the day, there's one wallet that has the keys that will point out or print out the Hive for somebody selling, or taking in the Hive for whoever is buying.
Mhm.
And so those are the two biggest differences.
So when I go to the exchange that you have and I decide to sell my, what was it, Ducat. Let's say I sell my Ducat for Ragnarok. That's not going, and let's say John's doing the same thing. 5 minutes behind me. That's not necessarily going to the same wallet when we make that exchange, because I may be dealing with one person and John's dealing with another. Am I understanding that correctly?
It used to be that way, but not anymore.
Oh, okay.
Currently, the people on that network operate a multi-signature wallet, and based on their participation in the network that day, the signatories will change. So, if the three of us are the highest collateralized people in the network, we'll have the keys. And with the new software that's coming out, it's just going to be so if there's 10 people, the top 5 collateralized people will hold those keys. And that just makes it more decentralized, and there's less of a one-stop shop for like an attack vector.
And will this change based upon the token? So let's say John builds the Django token on Honeycomb, and so now we have, if I'm if I'm a collateralized one of the top 5 collateralized for Duquette, there will be other 5 collateralized for the Django token, correct? Or is it all the same nodes?
It'll be different based on which network they're running on. So if you put a lot of money into your community over here, you might be a signature on a key, and it'll be different people. It'll be a different account. So if you send money to Duat, it's Duat CC for Community Chest, and then Deluxe CC for Deluxe Community Chest. And I think Speak has, I don't remember the name of that account, but the network does, and they're all basically the same. They tell APIs what they look like. So if somebody wants to build a new token, I can add it to the DEX on deluxe.io by just saying, okay, here's a new API to look at. And now you have the wallet features and all of that stuff is the same. And it'll say like, okay, you can just send your money or your Hive to this new account that has been put together.
Yeah, so just off the top of my bald head, I'm just thinking here that, like you said, the attack vector is spread out because you don't have this single honeypot. It's okay. You might be able to target the Django node system. You might be able to target the Duquette, but they don't have anything really to do with each other. So it's not like going into one wallet and there's the whole platform, like Hive Engine. You were saying, like, boom, you just hit Hive Engine.
Right. And there's also like we have forking protection. So if you try to steal the internal tokens for the network, like Duat or Deluxe, the community, just like when Justin Sun bought Steam, we can just fork those people's transactions out if somehow they manage to get a hold of it. And then on the wallet side, say the 3 of us are the top people on a network, the wallet's never going to be bigger than what we could afford to replace. So
Mm-hmm.
if the 2 of us wanted to collude, we would still be losing money trying to steal the Hive that's in the wallet. So it's a small honeypot as well, one that's reasonably sized for the network.
I just, you definitely need protection for the Django token because, people are going to be hacking that. And my password is 12345. So, if they want
I
to
thought
do
you
it with
changed
it.
it to 9876.
I was going to mix it up a bit and, capitalize an A in front of it or something. No, that's how savvy I am when it comes to this protection of assets. No, it's cool, man. I mean,
At least you change your password from password.
Yeah, password. What's your password? Password 12345. I actually used that like 20 years ago. I can't remember the size, but anyways, no, this is really cool because it's like, look, Hive Engine is fantastic. It's wonderful. It does what it's supposed to do. It's great. It's a huge, but it is as centralized as it gets. I'm a witness there, and it's not what the witnesses say. It's whatever the people behind Hive Engine say that gets pushed. It's very centralized, and it's got to do what it's doing. It's got to be for now, I guess. But it goes against. It doesn't go against. I should phrase this properly. Deluxe sounds like, and Honeycomb, excuse me, sounds like the real vision of what a layer 2 solution was envisioned to be on this blockchain. Hive Engine, again, works great. It's fantastic, but it's very centralized. This is attempting to spread it out a little bit more, which is beneficial.
Well, I think what you're touching upon, John, is layer twos are going to be a combination of centralization, decentralization, depending on what people want. And as long as you're tied to a base layer that has that decentralization, in this case, Hive, which I feel is pretty decentralized, especially compared to what's out there, Ethereum now. So if you got your base transaction layer as decentralized with, 125 nodes all over the world, then you have your layer two. I mean, Hive Engine, like you said, is fine. But for some of the things that people may want to build, Honeycomb might be a better solution, because I personally feel it's very important not only to have a base layer of a decentralized node system. I think a second layer decentralized node system is also important, because then, I don't know, Steve, what you call it. Then you have layer three, which has that additional protection because Honeycomb is decentralized, it's open source, and it doesn't have the attack vectors other things do, whether that attack's coming from hackers and people trying to get into honeypot, or that attack's coming from corporations, regulators, Justin Sun, whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not sure what layer 3 would look like, because I just haven't seen enough examples of it.
I would think you have Hive as a base layer, Honeycomb and your base infrastructure for Honeycomb as the second layer, and then if I come and build an app on Honeycomb on your node system there, I think that would be the third layer.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
at
my
that
game,
point
my
you're looking
skins.
at bridging between, say, Monero and like Hive, but using the layer 2 intermediary somewhere. But I'm not sure. I don't know what the use cases are yet, so I just would have to see. But yeah, I think anything's possible going forward when you start to develop your own contracts and have your own control of your network.
Now, smart contracts are an important subject, and maybe you could espouse on this a little bit, because I've made the case, other people have made this case. One of the things holding back Hive is that we really don't have robust smart contract platforms that people can come in and get involved in. People being developers, obviously, not people like me and John, and that kind of stifles innovation and expansion. And you mentioned a number of times you have smart contracts there. Obviously, this platform's evolving and growing. And I think another thing for anybody listening, it seems the mindset with Hive is not to have smart contracts at the base layer. Don't get into Ethereum problems that's just, eating up bandwidth and processing, and get those smart contracts at the second layer. And that way, if they collapse and get hacked or whatever, it's the second layer, it's not the base layer affected. Where do you see Honeycomb smart contracts, people being, is there a platform, or will there be a platform for developers to come in to start to tap into these smart contracts, to add their own, to create their own, and an open repository?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer just all at once, because like when I was saying, there's a very small honeypot for the most part for these kind of the networks. That also means that if you have smart contracts on your token, that for the most part, if they're controlling outflows from that wallet, they don't have the fork protection of because somebody can drain the wallet, for instance. So you really have to balance what your network is capable of doing with who is running it in some ways. So switching away from DPoS for certain things would the switching away from proof of stake to delegated proof of stake is one way to manage that. Bridging to a software like uh, let's say Ethereum for other kinds of smart contracts, and just having the ability to interact in different areas. Um, it yeah, I just have to say it's not a one size fits all solution for these things, but I do applaud the Hive developers for knowing what Hive is good at. And if it was a general purpose smart contract blockchain, it would be expensive. So the way that we have Hive here, it's really set up to be as cheap as it is, as universal as it is, and not prevent or provide a barrier for entry to, uh, the communities that it's helping the most. Because honestly, this blockchain is helping communities in ways that other blockchains just can't.
So with smart contracts, it sounds like obviously you agree not having it at the base layer. Are smart contracts, and I'll throw another loaded question at you. It may or may not be loaded. I have no idea. Are smart contracts, in your opinion, less expensive to run at the second layer as opposed to the base layer? What is the advantage of having smart contracts at your second layer versus base layer? Maybe we should start at that point.
So even on Ethereum, they know that this is where it gets really expensive. So they have what they term sharding,
Hmm.
and what this enables, if you have your contracts at the second layer, especially if you have these ZK rollups, which I guess would be like the layer 3 as well. Um, you you just distribute that. So instead of having decentralized, man, I just don't talk this much. So instead of having the decentralized, where everybody keeps a copy of everything, you have distributed computing,
Hmm.
and that's just like if you're familiar with like SETI at home or the Fold at home things. Everybody gets a little piece of a problem to solve, or um, a few people get a smart contract to verify, and that's really the only way things are going to be able to scale, even on Ethereum. So you have what a ZK rollup is. It's a zero knowledge proof that allows other people to compute things and report those things, and you, as the layer 2 or layer 1 or whatever that smart contract is, without knowing what actually happened in that rollup, you can say like, okay, I have enough information to credit account A or credit account B or whatever the smart contract would actually say. So yeah, even at this layer, we're talking about getting the most efficient way to get that process through. So yeah, it's a scaling issue, and you're looking at a world with almost 8 billion people now, and the more that these networks get used, the more they're going to have to be distributed and not just decentralized.
So basically, just following that line of thought, what you're building with Honeycomb is just one step in the process going forward. Honeycomb is going to have to continually branch further out and distribute and keep breaking apart further and further, simply because, like you said, of the scaling. Correct.
Right.
So that's where additional nodes handling individual communities comes into play, instead of, I don't know, I'll pick a number off the top of my head. Instead of 50 nodes trying to handle everything that's being built on Honeycomb, you have 5,000 nodes, and some of them, are handling just, very little small communities. And then some of the larger communities, you might have to have a few more nodes handling it, but they're still broken up, and they don't have the traffic that they do on like an Ethereum, where everybody's sharing every smart contract and every transaction's going through every node.
Right. So like on the Speak network, you're going to have encoder nodes, storage nodes, verifier nodes, or validators. I can't remember what they call them. And all of these pieces of the network are going to share different aspects. So there's going to be some delegated proof of stake. There's going to be proof of stake for the DEX wallets. There's a little bit of this decentralized, because not everybody's going to store every video on the Speak network. So all of these concepts are going to have to work together to build a very robust and scalable network.
Yeah, and when you mentioned Speak, because obviously those guys, Dan and Starkers is who I'm referring to. They've been beating the drum for a few years about immutability, about communities running their own nodes, storing their own videos, whether it's individuals storing it on their hard drives or IPFS, or however it's configured. And in talking to those guys and watching what they're doing, that's what led me to say, well, if you have immutability for speech and you have the ability to, host content that Facebook doesn't like, or YouTube doesn't like, Twitter doesn't like, the agenda people don't like, blah, 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 blah. This also can work for finance. And we know right now the present financial system, it's all Wall Street, it's a credit investor, it's regulated, it's banks, it's just as centralized as it gets. In fact, the regulators end up protecting the incumbents and destroy startups. And so the industry solution, the crypto industry, was DeFi. But as we're finding out, DeFi is more Fi and less D, because you have certain things that may not be quite as decentralized as advertised. And so that's where I put together a paper starting to talk about this. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see Honeycomb and some of these different facets that you're looking at building? How does that come into play with DeFi? And I sent you the article. I don't think I sent you the paper, but there were similar topics. How do you see some of that evolving and being built with? I mean, because it sounds like, just listening to you, some of the pieces that I wrote about in that paper, you're already constructing the decks and the exchange. You're already working on that and building different pieces. You already have the tokenization or the token creation being worked on. So is something like that feasible on a Honeycomb?
Oh yeah. A lot of I've read most of that, and yeah, just based on like terminology and stuff, it's a little bit harder to say, just like sit down and wrap your head around something all at once. Especially because the terminology in this community is so new that we don't always know what we're talking or know what we're reading the same. So from what I understand, a lot of that or most of that would be able to be built on Honeycomb with Hive as a backbone. Some of it would need a little bit of extra development. But yeah, I do believe that this is a central technology that can be very handy for developing many aspects of these kinds of things, if not all, depending on your development goals.
So basically, for just based upon that, Honeycomb really is, and this goes back to how you started the show and your proposal. Honeycomb for developers is really a very flexible uh, system of infrastructure. And even though maybe some of it was designed while you were interacting with the speak people, overall, this is meant to serve a wide variety of use cases depending on what people want. So if you want social media, if you want video, if you want text, if you want DeFi, if you want NFTs, if you want governance, you want all this different stuff, it can be built on Honeycomb or
Right.
utilizing Honeycomb.
And to Speak's credit, like the reason why I work so well with those guys, Dan and Matt, that they really have the same kind of vision that the software should be the cheapest aspect of running any of this trust stuff. You build it once, it's open source. Not only can people use it, but people can make it better and develop on top of it. And anything that they put out, it's open source from the start. So you don't have to worry about doing something again, like one and done, and then make sure that goes 1, 2, 3, and on.
Yeah, I mean that gets back into, and I shared this in one of our past episodes. I don't remember what topic we were on, but it goes back to the old decentralization versus centralization argument. And centralization in the short term or the near term is much more efficient because you can get things done. You have centralized, hierarchical, top down. This is what we're going to do. Go do it and get it done. But in the long term, decentralization always will usurp centralization because of innovation. And once you get the basis out there, and even though it's slower than the centralized world, you get more people working on it. And innovation in a centralized realm is very difficult because you have to schedule meetings. You got to get your boss approved. You need 3 layers of management sign off on it. Whereas with open source decentralization, somebody sees what you're doing. They take the code and they add to it and say, hey, look what I did. And you say, that's great. I'm going to copy it right back into what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm
And it
not
just
I'm
gets
not going to
built.
say that it's really easy to do some of that decentralized, because once you plant that seed, you really are stuck with like the root of whatever that is. And changing the way the tree grows is one thing, but it still gets harder and harder the bigger that network gets. Um, but if you want to take whatever that concept is and plant it somewhere else, that gets really easy.
Well, that's
Um,
what I mean. You fork out the software and you use it for a different purpose, but you have part of your codes already written. Now you might
oh
have to spend a month of Sundays trying to get it to do what you want, but at least you're not starting with your first line of code saying, okay, what do I do?
oh, like where we started from. Yeah.
Yeah, you already wrote the first lines of code, so somebody else can take that and just copy that and start going in their own direction. And that's how I believe. I look at these things as complex systems. I look at it like a jungle, and you have all different parts of the woods. You take a field and there's nothing in it. Then all of a sudden you get some saplings growing, and there's some small rodents running around and insects and all this other stuff. And as the bushes and the trees grow and things grow, then you get small animals in there and things like that, and they're all doing their own thing. They're you step back and watch it, it looks like it's all interconnected, but it's not, because it's just the rabbits are doing what rabbits do. A tree's going to do what a tree does. And it's the same thing with this. We have Hive. To me, is just, and I guess you could step back and say all crypto and blockchain is, but it's a complex system, and you have many people doing many different things, most of it uncorrelated. It's not coordinated. It's going in many different directions. And that's the ideal aspect of it, because over time, all of that stuff starts to integrate into each other, because everybody starts to serve a different role. And when you step back and you say, oh shit, that honeycomb stuff, that disregard built, that's tied to Hive. That's tied to what CTP's doing. That's tied to whatever. All of a sudden CyberX can tap into it. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I really do trust the market economy. And your point about centralization is also not centralized in some ways, because you still have to have the governing bodies like the SEC that make sure that the centralized actors aren't doing whatever they want to do. So where do you put all the people into this market economy that we're hoping to build? And hopefully it's at like the central layer of all of the different things. So um, I I wouldn't necessarily say like I'm opposed to regulation, but I am opposed to regulation because I want people to be involved in the decision making process at all levels in whatever the community is. So yeah, I'm not a fan of pump and dump schemes. I'm not a fan of a whole lot of these things that are running rampant in crypto as we speak. But hopefully, we can get to a place where we can still control that internally instead of relying on external horrendous management.
Well, and there's no doubt the industry had, done a shit job of policing itself, and we just looked the other way and spent years of when moon and Lambos and not giving a crap about any of that stuff. So, I mean, realistically, I take the approach. Some of this blowback we're getting from these regulators, we brought it upon ourselves by just constantly talking about, money and the wealth aspect of it, especially since that got far ahead of the development. If the development was there where we had a lot of decentralized infrastructure where we could, basically thumb our noses at these regulators, that's one thing. But when you don't have the infrastructure, you're at a point where it's like sooner or later they're going to turn around. They're just going to bitch slap you. And that's what they're starting to do.
Yeah, I think it was kind of by design as well. But yeah, it is what it is, and I think that, like you said, they're trying to make sure the incumbents stay in power, and they're trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
This is why, beating dead horse time, but why I think use case is so important instead of being like, I get it. Everything's price. Everything. People don't care about the use case. I say this all the time. They care about green candles. They just want to see things go up and up and up and up and up. And like Task has said for months now, anyone that thinks that a market just goes up and up and up and up and up and up is fooling themselves. There's got to be pullbacks, but this is where use case is so important, because if you got pullbacks, look at Hive. Hive is not the sexiest token on the markets, but whether it goes up or down, people are still going to use it tomorrow. And that's where, like you were saying, we're playing catch up almost. Like it almost happened, like you said, by design at the right time, where it was like, oh, we got all this hype. Oh, we don't get any use case. Don't worry about the use case. We'll figure that out down the road. Well, this is now we're opening up to this cluster.
And that's how you end up with the terrorists of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
they have their backing token, their reserve token had no utility. It's like, well, okay, other than maybe, just a little bit of gas fees to, move your UST around. But outside of that, what was the use case? Are there a lot of people like you out there, Steve? And what I mean by that is, how big is the community of developers who are doing like you're doing, building software, writing software and building projects that are decentralized infrastructure, open source? I just don't know across the crypto landscape. Are there a lot of people? I mean, do you tap into chat rooms? Do you tap into forums or boards where there's a lot of people building different aspects of this stuff all over the place? Or are most people just like going and saying, okay, I'll build the game on Ethereum because I can make bank, and nobody will use it because it's a $50 user fee, but I can make bank? Are there people doing what you're doing, and how big a community is that?
I know there's people doing what I'm doing. I'm just not good at finding these people. I do know that on Honeycomb we've had, I want to say probably in the neighborhood of 10 people who have contributed to the basic layer code now. And it comes down to like the people who run the software. Some of them just, they're like, hey, this is really cool and I can do this for my community, or I want to run a Speak Network token out. Most of them say like, they just want that experience. And then some people come in and they say like, okay, there's huge benefits to running these tokens. And I think like, say block trades and Deathwing would be in that neighborhood. And then there's other people who come in and they're like, okay, this is where I want to, really learn how to do some stuff. And I think a lot of those people, they also run Hive engine nodes and whatnot, but they've really like dug into the code and said like, okay, these are like things that could be fixed or things that we can improve. And still other people ask questions or like, hey, can you bring these technologies that I've read about over to this platform? So like, I want to say like I'm informed, but at the same time, it's a really big industry that's evolving week by week. So I'm not the most informed, and I really do rely on everybody else to bring ideas to the table and help get this stuff going forward. But yeah,
like
as far as like how many people are doing it, I don't know. I just know people are doing it, and I'm very happy about it.
So you don't mind people like me writing a 2,500 word post and dropping it in your inbox and saying, hey, look at this idea.
Oh yeah, like I said, I even like the vernacular that gets used, I have to go through and say like, okay, this is the concept that I have, but it's in my brain, it's structured a little different. So I have to take a little bit of time to ingest these things as well. But no, I really think that your post was like the step in the right direction of things that we need.
I think it's very interesting to take an overriding view of that, because what I put together there was rather broad. It was a broad stroke. It was rather a big picture thing. But, and this is why it kind of coincided with you being on here, because we made we invited you on before I had put this together and put it out there. But I think it's very important for people to understand, and if you want to reference the post that I'm talking about, it was released last Friday, Taskmaster 4450. But here you are sitting here saying, based upon what you've gone through and what you've wrapped your mind around, this is doable right here on Hive. This isn't pie in the sky stuff. It's doable at the layer 2 that you're building the infrastructure on. You already know you have some piece in place. I know you have piece in place because you mentioned them, the exchanges and stuff like that. And I don't think people realize what the capabilities are here in the Hive ecosystem. Some of the developers we have, some of the projects that are starting to take shape. It's very powerful. I mean, Hive is not some bullshit blockchain stuck out there in its own world, and oh, it's just a little cute little blockchain, and you do some upvotes and you earn some and do some posts and you earn a little bit of Hive and HBD. There's a lot of robust development taking place.
Oh yeah. Where is your post?
It's in your
I might have to look it for it in our links.
it's in your DM.
Yeah, it's in my DM.
Slid into your DMs.
But
Wow.
yeah, and this is something that I've been kind of harping on a little bit the last week. And John knows when I get on a track, it'll be a month worth of rants. It's time for people within Hive to start taking Hive seriously. Because it's not like we have a bunch of Bush League developers. We have some very smart, very advanced developers who know what they're doing. They're creating some stuff. Okay, it's not as fast as we all like, but those of us who are non-developers, we always think, well, just write some code and release it, and it should be ready to go by tomorrow morning. And it doesn't work that way. But we are taking an approach here of building things from the bottom up, from the base layer, and then on the second layer from the ground up, that are very powerful tools. And I think to the average user on Hive, it gets overlooked. And I think if people understood what was taking place and the potential of what could be built, they'd view Hive in a totally different manner. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Dude, it's the never-ending battle for me, like trying to get people to the good side of the force. But, it's more green candles and Ethereum than use case, actual community, real people. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
So I just did a quick review of the post, and yeah, some of the things that I do believe we can build are like the service infrastructure pools or things like that. And the lending aspects are going to be a little bit harder to build on Honeycomb because, like I said, if you have a certain size, you've seen those comics or something where there's a guy on a cliff, say the politician, and there's a whole bunch of people standing over here. But if the people walk off, the politician falls off the cliff. And it kind of is like that. So if you have to have enough collateral on the system in order to hold up whatever you're lending out. And it's the same on Hive too. You have your debt limit or HBD and the haircut rule and things like this. So Honeycomb is a great place to put a lot of the, say, contracts and the things that are very high volume, high velocity works well here. Things that don't are things with low velocity, things that you have to have, that inertia, the financial inertia to hold that capital in place. But it could be, depending on how big the network gets. But putting those onto a different chain, and in those cases, wrapping those tokens to another chain would help with, say, the lending aspect of things. So yes, a lot of things here, but a lot of things kind of depending on how many people are involved.
Yeah. And that's where I felt the starting point was to lay out a framework and see where it goes and see what can be done and what pieces we can incorporate. And obviously it's not one of those things where flip a switch and hey, look, it's all here one day. It's going to be evolutionary and things of that nature. But that was the direction I think things can head in. And if we have some of these broad ideas, all of a sudden it's like this is a lot more than just a blogging chain. Which we have all said that's what it is.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of these features are going to be added to a lot of different communities because at the end of the day, they're all valuable things. If they weren't valuable, we wouldn't have them in the first place.
Mhm.
And you know, blogging is just the collection of ideas. This is the pub of the American Revolution. This is hopefully where ideas come together, not just on Hive, but like in crypto in general. And just in the past 10 years, well, I guess Bitcoin's a little older than 10 years now. It's 14 years old. But you solve one problem in trust, and the rest are just falling like dominoes. And because everybody's so connected now, and you have the best minds from, not just Boston or Philadelphia, you have globally access to a lot more minds. They're all connected. There's what 4 billion people on the internet now, and 100,000 of those people are really freaking smart people who are putting all of their ideas together in this one space. So it's getting there, and these things are just going to be coming faster and faster.
Well, I'm of the belief, and this is just a little bit more of a general step back view of the digital world, Web3, whatever, the new internet, and I'd like to know your thoughts on it. Agree, disagree. I think, and that's also part of that overriding article. I think DeFi is going to be interwoven into everything in the digital world, and I think tokenization of everything is a real possibility. We have ways of incentivizing things. We have ways of rewarding things. We have ways of creating, quantifying activity in a monetary way, and because of that, I think everything's going to end up being DeFi. It's going to have those aspects interwoven. So whatever the community, even if it's a Buffalo Bills fan club, is going to have that DeFi capability within its community. And so you're going to need, you got tokenization. That means you need exchanges. That means you have the possibility for lending. That means collateralization. That means this. That means that. That means a whole bunch of other things that it's like it's going to be everywhere.
Right. Yeah, those Buffalo Bills need those tables so they can keep breaking them.
Look, okay. Let me explain. Okay, there's a small minority of people jump through tables at tailgates for the Buffalo Bills. Okay, majority of us are law-abiding citizens who just want to see Josh Allen jump over things. That's our new thing.
And there's a percentage like John that I would love to see trying to jump through a table and not hurt himself.
Dude, I'm not that old, man. Like I can, That being said, like I pulled my back yesterday just lifting up a chair. So, geez, if I fell through a table, man, I'd be on the IR for the next couple of years. I appreciate you getting the Buffalo Bills into this conversation, dude. I appreciate
I understand. I understand. You have your team and you're very loyal. Yeah. So I think overall, when you look at it from that perspective, that comes back to, again, what we started with, building the infrastructure for all this stuff. Because if the end game is where Web3 is decentralization, account ownership, rewards, incentives, incentivizing people, whatever they do, incentivizing people to run nodes and different types of nodes, and incentivizing people to write code, incentivizing people to write the instructions for the code, all this other stuff, incentivizing people to walk and root for the Bills and root for the Lakers or whatever the case may be. We need the infrastructure. And that's where I think the idea of, okay, we have Ethereum, we have Bitcoin, we have Cardano, we have EOS, we have Tron, we have Hive, we got, these couple dozen whatever blockchains, all the EVM forks, but it's much more than that. And it's actually, if I'm understanding correctly, the more important level is what the infrastructure is at the second layer and what's being done there.
Right. Yeah, because everybody came out and they're either an EVM or they're a remittance network, and I mean at the base layer, that's what you get. It is like when we talk about community and use case, mostly it has to come at the second layer, or else it's just not going to scale very well.
Yeah, I mean, Hive can scale because We don't have a lot of we limited the use case on chain to, I think there's like 9 functions I read that actually Hive does, like custom JSON, account creation, upvote, governance. I mean, there's like 9 or 10 things that all actions can be narrowed down to and that's all Hive does. Because there is no smart contract, so we don't have the lending platforms, we don't have the collateralization platforms. Anything that we want to do with that, we're going to have to build that at second layer, which is fine.
Right.
That keeps Hive nice and tight, and hopefully allows the core development team to keep scaling and reducing the size of the database, if you will. I mean, I think they halved it in the last hard fork, so it's a much smaller file that's being run as compared to what it was before. And everything else can go in, like you said, the million different directions based upon what's needed. And if you get a large community with the smart contracts and tokens and NFTs and all this other stuff, so they need to set up 100 nodes themselves to handle all the volume. That's what they do. They set up 100 nodes. You got your basket weaving community, which is small but loyal. They may get away with 3 nodes.
Right.
And none of it's tied directly to Hive.
Yeah, it's Hive is a really nice base layer, and there's going to be forks off of this software in the future as well, because it's just going to keep growing. But hopefully those forks will be very like cut and paste. You should be able to use the same, like, actually there is one there's a Hive keychain called like Well Vault or something like that, and all of our DPoS chains that we know and love, you can put your keys in that same wallet and interact with them. So it is like that even on the base layer for scaling reasons. Well, there's a lot more in the chat now.
Yeah, we're having a big old conversation about, Zach said that, what's so cool about Hive is that you're not going to go broke learning this stuff with Ethereum. If you make one transaction and say it fails, gas fee's gone, I mean, tough luck. But here you can actually screw up on Hive and it's not going to cost you a mortgage payment, which is nice, especially for onboarding. So.
Well, what I found interesting, I wrote an article about this. It's so unique when you think about it for an application that if they want their users to use it, it's an investment. It's not an expense. Gas fees on Ethereum are an expense. The quote gas fees on Hive are an investment. You buy some Hive, you power it up, and you spend your resource credits throughout the day, but they recharge. So it's like, and you still hold your Hive power. It's like not like once you hit submit, it's gone. It's like, okay, it'll be back tomorrow. Just wait a day.
Right.
And I think that's very, very unique. Could that be replicated at the second layer? That concept?
Say the concept one more time.
High power and the resource credits. Could that be replicated to get away from direct transaction fees at the second layer with your node system? Could you build something?
Yes. It's a little bit complicated, but there's some software called Ceramic, and using some other concepts called digital identities, there's going to be ways to interact with second layer tokens without having a Hive account, and offloading a lot of that transaction onto our nodes. So yes, there's ways to scale even off-chain transactions a little bit higher than Hive, even if we are using Hive as like the source of truth. But yeah, in general, like it's still a scaling problem. So I see like 32 Ethereum minimum for a node, and that's just because the Ethereum network is so big. Like on a Honeycomb, when you start a network, it can be as little as the $5 a month to run. I mean, you could do it cheaper if you have it on your home computer, but you have to worry about uptime and connectivity. So like say you put this on a $5 VPS on the internet, and that's what it costs to run it for you. The more people that run it, the more you have to have your proof of stake tokens. And I think like on a deluxe network, it's probably like $100 worth of deluxe. It's a few $100s worth of speak if you want to get into that area where you have an impact on the proof of stake network and have the possibility to hold the multi-signature keys. So it really is just a function of how big the network is in the capital terms. And yeah, like if you are in a network the size of Ethereum, and this is still a scaling problem. 32 Ethereum is their like spam filter. So if you have less than like $42,000, you're just considered spam. And at the end of the day, that's $42,000 is probably fees for like a one or two blocks. So um, that's just the nature of the beast at this point.
I'd like your insight onto this, and if there is any, maybe I'm going down the wrong path. But what interests me about Hive is we have text storage. It's decentralized data. You permissionless. You can post whatever data within the block size that you want. I've written about. I'm in the process with Leo Glossary. You can build an Investopedia, Wikipedia on Hive. We know that data storage is dominated by cloud companies, AWS and Google are probably the two big ones. Maybe Microsoft's in there. And so everybody is kind of, including like Netflix, who I believe is on AWS, you're at the mercy of these entities. Do you see, where does all this tie into the storage of information and data? Do you see this ultimately being a threat to these cloud companies and cloud becoming decentralized? Is this a realistic long-term viewpoint?
I don't think Amazon is gonna like kick Netflix off of his platform if that's what you're asking.
No, no, but they could. They could say, well, you destroyed our TOS and shut you down just like they do anybody else. Wouldn't be a good
Right.
PR move, but I mean, it's.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the difference here is, I guess Netflix isn't saying the wrong thing. So yeah, I guess Amazon has kicked people off their platform for that kind of thing, and people find new subscribers. And is it like an attack vector that people might run their honeycomb nodes or their hive nodes on this kind of infrastructure? Of course, but as long as not enough people are running it. So, for instance, a lot of people run on PrivX servers on Hive. As long as not enough people are running on PrivX servers, it's not a problem. We don't have to worry about it. So we do need to have centralization in a lot more aspects than just like a lot of people are running it. It needs to be ran in different places. It should be on every inhabited continent. There should be backups just in case there's some kind of whatever happens. Um, but yeah, the idea is even if all of this stuff got wiped out, it's in our minds now. We can spin up networks, and in some cases, it might be easier to start from scratch for a lot of these things. Yeah, would we be able to survive like a solar flare type apocalypse? Probably. Is it going to be the infrastructure like companies like AWS that stop us? I don't think so. Maybe on a little scale here and there for like Alex Jones or somebody who's high profile, but yeah, I don't think the computing companies get into it as much as we think they might.
Yeah, I don't think long term they're wanting to get into this. They want to control their ecosystem. I mean, it's like the absurdity of people saying, "Well, why doesn't Elon Musk look at Hive?" Well, why would Elon Musk look at Hive? It's like he has no interest in Hive. He has interest in what he can control and monetize, and he has an idea about Twitter, and that's a platform he can go and buy and he believes monetize. So, I mean, it's like I don't believe AWS or Google or anybody's ever going to embrace this stuff because this is against, any more than Facebook or Meta, whatever the hell they call themselves these days, is going to embrace this stuff. It goes against their existing business model, which they're raking billions in off of. So it's up to us to disrupt them, not for them to join us.
Right. They'll join us eventually.
If they can make money off of it, they will. I mean, it's like Wall Street came to this. Why? Because they look at cryptocurrency as another asset class that they can make money off of. Why,
Yeah,
why, why are the banks wanting to become custodians? Because then they can sell their crypto at an upcharge, I'm sure, to their wealthy clients and charge them to store the keys. It's a win-win for them.
yeah. Hopefully, it's a win-win for a whole lot of people. And when it is, that's when everybody wins, and this gets adopted, and things get better.
Well, my view is there's not a lot of win-win when you're talking about the JP Morgans and Goldman Sachs. There's win, but I don't know if there's the other win in the equation too often. They make Jamie Dimon make sure he wins. I don't know if how many others around him do, on the other side of the deal. But that's the banking system.
Right.
Any comments from the other areas, John, or just what
No,
we
it's good, man. It's good talk, and I'm always here to talk about cryptocurrency and the Buffalo Bills. It's perfect for me. I don't know about anybody else, but Bills on blockchain.
So if you see a node, Bill's Mafia, come across on Honeycomb, Steve, John finally set up a node.
Finally set up a node. If some Anon is asking for NFT tables to break, I'll know it's John.
Yes. Please do. Dude, always a pleasure, man. Great having you on. Thanks for everything you're doing with Deluxe and Honeycomb. And again, just throwing it out again. I put it a few times, but one last time for good measure. Proposal 234. How you come up with that number, huh? 234. Was that? It's just
Yeah, it's just sequentially.
Last one was 233.
And
right?
if you have a spare witness vote or want to change one around, I'm also a witness and hoping to get more involved in that kind of stuff.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It was
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you being here and explaining what you're doing. And hopefully, as a result of this, people listening are more excited about Hive.